right-wingers around the world. And at the core of all of this is the deliberate cultivation of cruelty, a political strategy. Tearing children away from their mothers at the southern border, that was intentional. It wasn't a failure, it was a feature. It was designed to cause pain. It was designed to deter. It was designed to send the message that unless you're white, America no longer has any interest in the poor, the tired, the huddled masses. And now we see it with his refusal to return Kilmar Garcia. He has turned science into a partisan enemy. He doesn't just lie, he declared war on the very idea of the truth. He says climate change is a hoax. He politicized a deadly epidemic. And the result, hundreds of thousands of unnecessary COVID deaths, and now we've got unnecessary measles deaths. And that's the point, to destroy our shared reality, because then you can more easily overthrow democracy. He didn't just inherit America's divisions, he weaponized them. He didn't unify urban and rural, rich and poor, black and white. He pitted them against each other for personal gain. Rage, like with Rupert Murdoch, rage is his currency. Fear is his strategy. When people are busy hating each other, he knows they won't notice who's robbing them blind. And of course, it's him and his billionaire buddies. Marjorie Taylor Greene tasing, having her security people tase people who dare question town hall. This is the new normal. This is the perfect reflection of Donald Trump. In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
Our book for the Thom Hartmann Book Club today is A Nation Forged by Crisis, A New American History by Jay Sexton. And I'm reading from the introduction. This is page 9. The quest for national security and global power, America's shifting position in the international economy, and fluctuations in immigration have made the United States the nation that it is today. Americans' foreign relations have been conditioned its history not only in their cumulative effects over the long haul, but also as a result of their volatility. In periods of crisis, America's position in the world has lurched in unexpected directions. For as inexorable as the rise of the United States appears in retrospect, there have been contingent moments in which the very existence of our nation was up for grabs. This is the essence of crisis. The world turned upside down, the known replaced by the unknown, panic reigning as people struggle to maintain their balance and shifts in the very ground beneath their feet. It came with a speed and ferocity that left men dazed, New York Times correspondent Elliot Bell wrote of Wall Street's catastrophic collapse in October of 1929. Quote, the market seemed like an insensate thing that was wreaking a wild and pitiless revenge upon those who thought to master it, end quote. Crises are contagious, spreading like viruses from. It's not without reason that the word crisis was associated with medical conditions and health scares in the 19th century. Each of the periods under consideration in this book were less a singular crisis than a set of interlinked crises. A political crisis could trigger an economic panic, which in turn could intensify social conflict, and so on. As these pandemics spread through the body politic, crisis itself was normalized, becoming an almost accepted characteristic of an age. Just as foreign crises have spread to the United States, domestic ones have spilled across its borders, unsettling foreign countries and peoples, as well as reconfiguring America's connections to the world. Consider the fateful winter of secession that followed the 1860 election of Abraham Lincoln. The crisis over slavery that divided the Union into warring sections that led to a series of sharp reversals in America's position in the global system. The foreign capital that had rushed into the roaring American economy in the preceding decades suddenly began to flee. Indeed, more capital left the United States in 1860 to 1862 than came into it. Also a once-in-a-century occurrence. One of the world's most valuable commodities and America's largest exports, Southern cotton, was confined to the ports of the Confederacy as a result of Richmond's ill-fated diplomatic strategy, leading to unemployment and social unrest in the British textile town of Lancashire. The most unexpected reversal was how the national security that the United States had attained after the war against Mexico in the 1840s was suddenly imperiled, with European powers encroaching once again upon the Western Hemisphere. Meanwhile, the Confederate emissaries across the Atlantic were in search of alliance with Britain. Our country, Secretary of State William Seward lamented in early 1861, after having expelled all European powers from the continent, now threatened to relapse into an aggravated form of its colonial experience, and like India, Turkey, China, and Italy, become the theater of transatlantic intervention and rapacity. A wider view of American history that looks beyond the nation's borders brings into focus not only the migration patterns, economic flows, and international rivalry of the United States to the world, but also those rare moments in which the very existence of the nation was in question. Perhaps none was more pregnant with implications than the autumn of 1877, when the fate of the Patriots' bid for independence hung in the balance. Having proclaimed their independence to the world the previous 4th of July, their cause had stalled on the battlefield and in the diplomatic courts of the old world. I think the game is pretty near up, Washington privately confessed at year's end. To accomplish their independence is not quite so easy as to declare it, Jeremy Bentham haughtily remarked. But then a series of events forever changed the course of modern history. The stunning Patriot victory at the Battle of Saratoga in October, the drafting of the Articles of Confederation in November that, for all its limitations, further demonstrated the political resolve of the Americans. And most of all, the alliance signed with France in February 1778, which provided the Patriots with the resources, military assistance, and naval power that ultimately tipped the scales in their favor. There are comparable Saratoga moments in other crises in U.S. history, as we shall see. These contingent moments played out in their own distinctive ways, but are joined by a common denominator that has been curiously forgotten in our age of U.S. global power. Foreign states and people have played decisive roles in the critical moments of American history. As we make our way through our own era of global instability, in an unprecedentedly interconnected world, a more important lesson from the past to keep in mind. Crisis may beget crisis, Franklin Roosevelt said, as his administration transitioned from battling the Great Depression to entering the Second World War. But the progress underneath does not wholly halt. It does go forward, end quote. Like so many of Roosevelt's public statements, this one reveals a truth even as it conceals others. The United States came out on the other side of its greatest crises as a stronger and more efficiently organized nation, as Roosevelt suggested. The process of mobilizing resources to counter threats catalyzed innovations in political economy, such as the creation of a national financial system during the Civil War, and the economic reforms of the New Deal. The book is A Nation Forged by Crisis by Jay Sexton.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Hey, happy Tuesday. It's great to be back in the seat here. As as some of you know, a little over a year ago, Jerry Schneiderman died from COVID, for God's sake. And he was fully vaccinated. Let this be a warning, be careful. And the official, on the autopsy was COVID sepsis. And he was healthy. I mean, he'd come back from, so anyhow, he left a will, and I was the executor, and his bank in New York refused to close his account and unless I physically showed up in person. So I had to fly to New York to sit with the assistant branch manager of TD Bank and say, yes, I am that guy. They wouldn't do it by Zoom. They wouldn't do it by letter. They wouldn't, let me sign a power of attorney. I had to show up in person, which is like stupid. But anyhow, the upside of it was that, I flew out there Saturday, got there, about midnight Saturday night, and Sunday morning, Ali Velshi invited me to be on his show. I don't know if you caught it, but from 8 to 8:30 Eastern time, I was on his show, along with just an absolutely brilliant guest. Forgive me for not having her name at the tip of my tongue. She was an expert on protest movements. And I thought it was a fascinating conversation. And in fact, it inspired me to write a piece that I published yesterday, which I will get to in a few minutes. Actually, I'm going to get to, I guess, at the, in this hour. So we got a lot to talk about today. It's just you and me, all 3 hours here. Now that gunmen are turning their weapons on CEOs, we've got this slaughter in New York City. Thankfully happened after I left. I'm sure it really messed up traffic in addition to killing a bunch of human beings. So anyhow, now the gunmen are turning their guns on CEOs. This is the second, executive shot. Will corporate America ask for gun control? What do you think? Or are they just going to double down on, we'll get to that in a moment. Also, bribes, bias in South Park, Trump's authoritarian agenda. Also, this is not a drill. Infiltrate your local Dems before it's too late. In the second hour of our program, a Judge Boasberg, in fact, has been hit with a misconduct complaint by the Department of Justice for saying that if Donald Trump continues to defy the courts, it could provoke a constitutional crisis. So the First Amendment does not apply to judges, apparently. And the GOP has a sinister new pilot project. They rolled it out in North Carolina and now appear to be embracing it as a national model. And Trump wants religion pushed in the workplace. What could possibly go wrong? In the third hour of our program, shocking corruption exposed in green energy and big oil giveaways in the so-called Big Ugly Bill. And a crazy alert, did Donald Trump just say that going to Epstein's private island was a privilege? It's getting weird out there. It's just getting very, very weird out there. But to start out, I want to start out with my op-ed today because I think it's relevant to all of this. Even in the way that, I watched some coverage this morning of the gunman, Shane Tamura is his name. He used a Palmetto State Armory AR-15 in the massacre at Midtown. This is an M4 assault rifle, basically. It's an AR-style gun. It sells for around $500. It had a high-capacity magazine. He went into the 33rd floor of 345 Park Avenue it killed a guard on the way in, a police officer who was working a part-time job. The NYPD also found a loaded revolver, ammunition, magazines, and the rifle case. He shot Officer Dadarul Islam, 36, dead. He gunned out a woman behind a pillar in the lobby, sprayed more bullets around. And then he went into the offices of the building owner. One man was shot and killed, and then he shot himself in the chest. And what I found interesting about the coverage this morning is that nobody, and I saw it on both MSNBC and CNN, and then I listened to it on NPR as I was walking to work, and nobody asked the question, is this going to provoke a call, a demand for gun control in the United States? You would think, for just killing school children, it clearly was just fine with, corporate America. Nobody was taking a stand in favor of gun control. We're the only country Literally the only civilized country in the world, developed country in the world, where somebody can, walk around with an AR-15. There is no other country that allows this. But, here we've got the NRA, we've got the gun lobby, we've got a bunch of people who make guns and who, gleefully make millions and millions of dollars and perhaps billions selling these things. And our media just doesn't seem to see it as a crisis. Jessica.substack.com, every Sunday she has or maybe it's Saturday, has a list of all the mass shootings during the previous week. I guess it's Saturday. And there's always, 4, 5, 6, 7 mass shootings, not just shootings, in the United States. We have, basically a dysfunctional media, and it just got a hell of a lot worse because last week CBS and its parent company Paramount just waved the white flag and handed Trump a $16 million bribe and agreed to censor their own programming, their own newsroom, to curry favor with our